Welcome to this commemoration of the National Day of Mourning. My name is Steve Jackson. I'm a Vice President with the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, and it's my honor and privilege today to be the Master of Ceremonies. I would like to thank you all for attending today's special event, and especially to those who have traveled a distance in order to be with us here today. We thank you very much. Friends, the National Day of Mourning has been a tradition for more than 30 years to remember and honor those workers who have died, been injured, or suffered illness in the workplace. It is a time for reflections, remembrance, and a recommitment to safety in our workplaces. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce our first speaker, the Chair of the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, Elizabeth Whitmer.
Thank you, Steve. Premier Wynne, Minister Flynn, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the board, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to each and every one of you who has joined us today. In particular to you, Premier Wynne, Minister Flynn, the Penny family, and I know that Ron Ellis and Jessica Sabatino are here as well, and I know that we have many members of the Threads of Life family. To all of you, employers, labor, families, and guests, I say welcome. It's because of you that we're able to celebrate today, and we're able to take the time to remember and to honor the many workers who have suffered workplace injuries or occupational diseases or lost their lives while on the job. Today we come together and we are reminded of the terrible human, social, and economic toll that workplace illnesses, injuries, and fatalities have on families, friends, and communities. As chair of the board, I am informed each time a worker is killed. And in 2014, there were 233 workers who, according to the provincial numbers, lost their lives. That is 233 people too many. Every time I am informed about yet another death, it still has the same chilling effect on me. It saddens me as it first did when I learned about the workplace death of Paul Kell's son, Sean, some 15 years ago when I was Minister of Labor. I consider and I think of these men and these women of all ages who are working so hard, and we're looking forward to with their family and friends to their future with optimism of hope. I think of the family and friends left to mourn and how their lives have been changed forever. So this day of mourning helps us to remember the human face of these tragedies and their impact on their families. Today, I am honored that we are joined by the Penny family, parents Rod and Patty and sister Trish, who lost their son and their brother Luke in 2010. Luke had started a new job working for a basement waterproofing company when a wall collapsed, killing him instantly. Luke, ladies and gentlemen, was just 26 years old. And I've been told that he was a most charming and a most hardworking young man. So the Penny family is here today representing all the families throughout our province who have lost a loved one and whose lives have been forever changed. Their presence reminds us that the best way we can honor them is today, together. Let us reaffirm and let us rededicate ourselves to doing all we can to make our workplaces healthy and safe. One death, one injury, or one worker with occupational disease is one too many. So today, let us do all we can to ensure that all workers come home safely at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, we can and we must do better than we have. So let us together make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Chair, for those remarks and for your leadership of the WSIB. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce the Honourable Kathleen Wynne, the Premier of Ontario.
Thank you very, very much, and it's an honor to be here. Bonjour, bonjour, Annie. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. And thank you to Elizabeth and to David Marshall and to the whole team from the WSIB. I'm honored to be here, joined by Kevin Flynn, my colleague, but especially joined by the Penny family. Thank you very much for being here, and as we were talking about earlier, allowing us to commemorate your son and brother and all of those who have been affected by this tragedy. I know that this is just one of many events being held around the province and across the country. I want to begin by acknowledging all of the families and friends who have joined us today to remember their loved ones who have been injured or lost over the past year as a result of their jobs. The death or injury of a loved one while they are at work is devastating. On this day of remembrance, I want to express my deepest sympathy to all of those who have experienced this terrible loss. En cette journée de deuil national, j'aimerais offrir mes plus sincères sympathies à tous ceux et à toutes celles qui ont éprouvé cette terrible perte. In the past couple of weeks, we have once again seen how quickly tragedy can occur and how quickly a family can be shattered. My heart goes out to all of those who have been personally affected by workplace tragedy. Families like the Pennies, who lost their son Luke in the trench collapse that Elizabeth just spoke of. The toll of these losses is immeasurable. What is most disturbing is that many of these incidents could have been prevented. And as we mourn these tragedies, we accept our responsibility to learn and to do better. We will do our best to ensure that every person in Ontario is able to enjoy a safe and healthy work environment, that no one has to worry whether a friend or a family member or whether he or she himself will come home from their shift, so that no one else has to go through this. On behalf of the people of Ontario, I offer you our strength and support as you mourn the loss of your loved ones. Au nom de la population de l'Ontario, je vous souhaite du courage et vous offre notre soutien alors que vous vivez le deuil d'être cher. Together, we will pay tribute to their memory, and together, we will work to ensure that no other families have to experience this devastating loss. Thank you very much. Merci, miigwech.
The Minister of Labour, the Honourable Kevin Flynn.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for that very kind introduction. A few months ago, I had a man come into my office that was very interested in health and safety and in reducing workplace incidents. And he said, wouldn't it be nice if at the start of every speech, no matter what the speech was about, you talked a little bit about health and safety. Now, we've managed to keep that promise since that day. It doesn't matter whether I'm talking to a legal audience or an environmental audience or an educational audience. I always try to touch on health and safety. And the reason I do that is that often we think of it as an issue that involves somebody else. But I ask you to think of it in terms of you being a parent, as you being a son or a daughter, or perhaps even some of you are grandparents. And I ask you to think back to that very first day when your son or your daughter came home from work and they said, Mom, Dad, I got a job. Somebody hired me. I went through an interview process and they picked me, and I'm going to work tomorrow. And I'm as guilty as anybody, I think, on this, because this happened to my son. I asked him how much he was going to get paid. I asked him if he got a uniform. I asked him if I had to pick him up after work. I never once thought to stop and ask him what to do if he felt unsafe at work, if he was asked to do something that perhaps wasn't the right thing to do, if he knew what to do. And I find when I talk to people, when I talk to audiences, and they put themselves in the role of being either that son or that daughter or that mom or that dad, it sheds a little bit of a different light on the issue, because we realize there's a human dimension to this issue that certainly affects each and every one of us. So it's an honor to be here with you today. It's a National Day of Mourning, as you know. Today's the day we remember those who have died, whether they've suffered illness through work or have been injured on the job. On this day, we also honor the friends and the families and the colleagues and those people whose lives have been drastically altered as a result of these tragedies. Now, there is some good news. Over the last decade, we've significantly lowered the number of workplace injuries in the province of Ontario. We've managed, through your hard work, to reduce those injuries by about 40%. But despite this, despite Ontario being one of the safest places to work in Canada, too many people continue to lose their lives or suffer an injury or an illness simply by the act of going to work. No job, ladies and gentlemen, is worth a life. No job is worth an illness or an injury. While it's important to track the numbers to ensure our plans are working, there is, of course, a very real and a very human dimension to all of this. When workplace tragedies happen, lives are devastated. Families, co-workers, indeed entire communities feel the impact, are torn apart. It's painful. I know everybody who has taken the time out of their lives today to be here takes this very, very seriously. I know everybody in the legislature from all parties take it very seriously. I thank the Premier for being here with us today, as well as my colleagues Randy and Cindy. I'd like to thank Patty and Rod and Trish and Fran, who've experienced this issue like most of us here haven't. We all know that more work needs to be done, and that to get it done, we're all going to need to work together. So I'm asking for your help today, just as I ask every single audience I speak to as Minister of Labour. Help me spread the word. Spread the word to your own families tonight, across your communities, in your workplaces. Make sure that everybody in this province understands that workers have the right to refuse unsafe work, and that there's resources available through the Ministry of Labour so that both employers and workers understand the rights they have and the responsibilities they have. This is not a day for partisan politics, but I do want you to know that your government takes worker health and safety very, very seriously. We've taken action in a number of regards in the recent past in this, and we have a lot more to come. We've almost doubled the number of workplace health and safety inspectors that travel throughout the province of Ontario. We're continuing to conduct those inspection blitzes. But we all know we still have more work to do, and we're working very hard to get it done. So sadly, ladies and gentlemen, it's too late for those who have already left us, but we can honor their memory today by rededicating ourselves to doing whatever it takes to prevent workplace fatalities, injury, and illness. Let's continue to work hard to change the culture around workplace health and safety. Let's remember all of those who have left us as a result of being killed or injured on the job. Keep them in our thoughts so we never forget the importance of today and the importance of our commitment to keep workers safe in this province. Thank you.
Today we are gathered to remember the workers who didn't make it home from their jobs. In this country, when someone leaves for work, we expect them to come home. Tragically, that isn't always the case. Lots of jobs have inherent risks, such as police, first responders, heavy equipment operators, construction, and the list goes on. Accidents can happen on any work site, anywhere, to anyone, for many reasons. Having worked on hundreds of job sites myself over my career as an electrician, I have seen my share of fellow workers injured on the job. From minor cuts and bruises and broken bones to lifelong debilitating injuries and, yes, fatalities. While it's tragic anytime someone is injured on the job, it's important that we also focus on those principles of prevention and precaution. New technologies, precaution, and knowledge of the workplace hazards are key to preventing accidents and not having those tragedies affect so many. Well, it's a tragedy anytime someone is hurt. We must do better, and we must do our utmost to prevent them. That's why it's important for there to be a focus not only on prevention, but also on rehabilitation and reintroducing workers back into the workforce. There needs to be support for workers while their injury prevents them from working. But sometimes these injuries make it not possible to return to their former employment or even their former careers. It's important that we strive to support and retrain workers so they can be back in the workforce wherever possible. Our goal must always be to have people using their talents to provide for themselves, their families, and to live a long, happy, prosperous, healthy life, and to return home from that day at work and to prevent those tragedies from happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy, for your comments and for being here with us today. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and I'd like to welcome to the podium the Labour critic for the New Democratic Party, Cindy Forster. Cindy?
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here on behalf of New Democrats and our leader, Andrea Horwath, and to share the podium with the Premier, with Elizabeth Whitmer, the Chair of the Board, Kevin Flynn, our Labour Minister, and my NPP colleague, Randy Hillier, as well as the Penny family. I want to start by saying that I wish we didn't have to be here again this year making these kinds of speeches. Today we commemorate the mourning for workers across this province who have been killed on the job and in 100 countries around the world. I also wish that I didn't have to quantify the tragedy, but I think that raw numbers are important. They're a grim reminder of the dangers that Ontario workers face each and every day. So in order to raise awareness and in order to, in some inadequate way, really offer comfort and sympathy to the families who have lost loved ones and to reassure them that the loss of their loved ones isn't in vain, I want to cite a few of those specifics. According to the WSIB statistical report, on-the-job fatalities have alarmingly increased by almost 40% over the last 5 years. The grim reality is that each year, more than 80 workers die in traumatic workplace accidents, 300 workers die an even slower death as a result of occupational disease, and over 200,000 each year are maimed or seriously injured on the job. All of this is put into even more perspective with last week's second-year anniversary of the collapse of the Rana Plaza garment factory in Bangladesh, resulting in over 1,100 fatalities. Just last week, here in Toronto, William Sakira fell 3 stories to his death, leaving behind a wife, an 11-year-old son, and many grieving Leuna 506 brothers. On Tuesday, Mark Atala, a member of the Carpenters, 27, was crushed as a crane collapsed in Brampton. Just 3 weeks ago, bricklayers Luigi Cudini and Shane Jennings of Local 1 died when their working platform buckled and they fell 5 stories at a construction site here in Toronto. Clearly, there is much more that needs to be done to turn every Ontario workplace into a safe workplace, one that prevents not only fatalities, but debilitating injuries and occupational diseases that affect workers each and every day. At the end of the day, the real value of the Day of Mourning is that it raises awareness. This year's theme, the strength of one, the power of many. So while we mourn for those who have lost their lives, I'm hopeful that an impression is made upon employers first and foremost, but also on workers and of course on policymakers. So on behalf of my NDP colleagues and New Democrats across the province, I want to convey my sincerest condolences to all of the families whose loved ones didn't come home at the end of their shift. To the families of William, Mark, Luigi, Shane, and of course Luke, and countless others. In standing here today, let us pay our respects, but most importantly, let's renew our commitment to ensure future without workplace injury and illnesses. We owe the hardworking men and women of this province nothing less. After all, Workers are our most valuable resource in this province. We mourn for the dead, we fight for the living, so we can avoid future workplace tragedies so that every Ontarian who leaves work in the morning can return home safe and sound each night. Thank you.
Unfortunately, and all too often, we are made aware of a life that has been lost because of actions or inactions that should not have occurred. Such news is heartbreaking. Together, we acknowledge being joined here today by the family of Luke Penny, a young man whose life was tragically cut short in a preventable workplace incident 5 years ago. Rod, Patty, and Trish, thank you for being here to honor your son and your brother. Thank you also for channeling your grief by speaking out and sharing your story in the hope that other families do not suffer the same experiences that your family has. We salute your efforts, and please know that you have our support. Apart from being a sober occasion, which is to remember the workers we have lost, April 28th also serves as a call to action. As leaders representing workplace parties, we must challenge each other to push for better safety standards on all job sites and in all workplaces. We have a serious role to play in educating one another about workplace safety. This issue goes far beyond politics, as it is people's lives that are at stake, and I hope that the labor movement, the business community, the government, and the opposition parties realize just how serious this needs to be. Over the years, I have seen governments of all stripes come and go. I have seen legislation evolve, but the one thing that stays constant throughout all time is the carnage of preventable deaths and family suffering of lost loved ones. Despite proclaimed best intentions in recent years, we still have workers who are killed and maimed in the workplace, and it has to stop. Coroner's inquests of every single construction workplace death has found that these incidents were absolutely preventable had certain protocols and/or best business practices had been followed. Competent enforcement, education, and training are at the heart of the solution. Every one of you here today has a special role to play in bringing the change we need to stop the carnage and end the climate of fear that prevails in the workplace, which forces workers to be silent. We can do better. We must do better. Let's work together to make sure that in Canada in the 21st century, men and women are not harmed as a result of practices and situations that are completely preventable. We are all after the same thing, making sure that every Ontario worker comes home safe and sound at the end of each work day. How we get there is the real challenge. We may have our disagreements, and no one particular organization has all the answers, but if we work together, we can affect the change that we need. Of this, I am absolutely certain. In my view, some will disagree, a number of substantial improvements can be made if we, 1, have competent enforcement, education, and compulsory training. 2, ensure that workers truly have not only the right, but the obligation to speak up when they see unsafe practices without fear of retribution. The whole prevention system transforms from a due diligence system into a proactive prevention system. Thank you once again for inviting me here and allowing us all to share this moment to honor the fallen workers who built our province. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Our family is honored to have been invited to the Day of Mourning. Our family represents one of many families behind a workplace tragedy. We are here in honor of my son Luke, who was killed in a workplace tragedy. It also gives us a chance to remember and respect others and their families whose lives have been also affected by workplace illnesses, injuries, and fatalities. This event provides an excellent opportunity to reinforce awareness that safety in the workplace is vital. No more families should have to go through the suffering of workplace fatalities, life-altering injuries, or occupational diseases. This is not acceptable and can no longer be tolerated. We all need to work together in making safer work environments. We need to raise the awareness of the devastating impact that a workplace tragedy can have on a family, a workplace, and within an entire community. Even one workplace incident is one too many. Luke left for work on the morning of May 19th, 2010. This was a new job for Luke, and he'd been working with the company for only about 3 weeks. I said goodbye, love you, have a good day. Little did I know that this would be the last time I would see or speak to my son again. Luke was working for a company that had been hired to waterproof a garage wall of a less than 1-year-old building. Luke was working in the trench beside the wall. Without warning, the garage foundation wall collapsed out from the bottom, trapping and killing him instantly. The company Luke worked for had 8 Ministry of Labor charges laid against him. After 2 years of pre-trials and a court date was set. About another year later, about 2 weeks before the scheduled court date, we were informed that the Crown Attorney was not going to pursue these charges. Why? We're still not sure of the reason and probably never will know. In March of this year, the coroner's inquest was held. One of the findings from the inquest was that Luke, who only had 3 weeks' experience, and a 17-year-old full-time high school student who was a volunteer worker, were left alone on the job site without supervision. If you are a manager or supervisor, especially for young or new workers, please make sure that your employees always have adequate supervision. Young and new workers need closer supervision than more experienced employees, and as they are statistically more likely to be hurt on a job. Because of this tragedy, our lives has changed forever. We lost a son, a brother, a grandson, nephew, and a close friend to many. Just wanted to mention, if you have not signed up for the annual Steps of Life walk, the first weekend in May, visit the Steps of Life website and find a community near you. Thank you so much. With your help and the help of more than 30 communities across Canada that are participating, we can raise more awareness about the critical importance of work-safe places to all Canadians. Because of the funds raised in the Steps for Life walk, families are able to receive much-needed support. Through the Threads of Life family forums, families attend workshops and receive support on learning how to cope with their tragedy. Funding also provides for volunteer family guides, which is a one-on-one peer support program, as well as the Speakers Bureau training for those who wish to tell their stories at safety seminars, educational facilities, and community functions. Our family has met some of the most amazing people through Threads of Life and Steps of Life. I truly wish I had the opportunity to meet them for a different reason. The price was way too high to become a member of this organization, but our family fully does support everything Threads of Life stands for. We believe that these workplace fatalities, life-altering injuries, or occupational diseases are socially, morally, and economically unacceptable. On behalf of Threads of Life and the Penny family, we thank you. Please work safe and seize the day.
In concluding remarks, I would just like to thank again everybody who was with us today, and again, thanks to those individuals who traveled distances to be here. It's very significant of you to make that effort, and we thank you so very much. As far as our presentation is concerned, this actually concludes our formal presentation. And in closing, I would ask us that we all strengthen our commitment to work towards the elimination of all workplace illnesses and fatalities, and to ensure that I couldn't help but think, as I heard, and I'm sure you did too, that the kids are in the daycare behind us. And let's hope that those kids never actually have to realize an event like this in their lifetime as they grow up.